Excellent. Well, good afternoon, officially, everyone. My name is Danny Lauer. I am the Assistant Director and Coordinator of Adult and Alumni Career Resources here in the Grand Valley Career Center. If you haven't yet done so, please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat so we know who you are. We're so glad you're here today. These webinars are hosted in partnership with Career Center and GVSU Alumni Relations. So we're committed to supporting you as GVSU grads in your lifelong learning, professional growth. And when we do these programs, that's one way of getting to support you in that way. So I'm very pleased to introduce our webinar facilitator today is Kaylee Wolken. Kaylee is a certified career coach as well as a licensed professional counselor. She is the owner of Lookout Point Career Coaching, and in that private practice, she guides her clients towards finding renewed purpose and command over their lives. She is a burnout specialist, and she helps burnt out professionals find more meaning and exciting in their careers. So we're so glad to have her here, lending her expertise on this topic of burnout. And before I turn it over to Kaylee, just a couple Zoom etiquette rules. Again, this is being recorded, so we will share this recording with you all after the webinar concludes. We'll also have it posted on our career and life resources video library for you to view, as well as all of our other previous webinars too. So we want you to make sure to be respectful for others participating in the workshop. So if you need to do anything outside of it, please make sure to just turn off that camera, mute your mic. We all know those kind of main Zoom things by now, but if you have questions, we will likely have some time at the end. I know a lot of you submitted questions in your RSVP, and Kaylee is hopefully going to be able to get to most of those throughout the session. But if you come up with additional questions, let us know, and we will try to save some time later for those. So yeah, I think that's all from me. Kaylee, I will hand it to you.
Thank you, Danny. And I am going to tell you guys, my computer is hitting a point where it doesn't like to multitask, so I cannot see the chat. So Danny's going to manage the chat for me, and if there's questions or things like that, we'll definitely have them at the end. But I'm really thankful to be here. I absolutely love talking with GVSU alum, and I'm excited to go through this with you guys because in some ways, I feel like I'm on this mission to stop a burnout from being this ongoing issue in the workplace. It's just seems to get worse and worse, and it's so incredibly important to me that people know the skills and resources needed to navigate burnout, to stop it, to deal with it if they're dealing with it, and all of those pieces. So, thank you for having me. I want to make sure that you're in the right spot, but I have a feeling just based on the responses, y'all are in the right place. But this is for you if you've either dealt with burnout or you just want to avoid it. And you're ready to find real solutions, not just for managing it, for keeping it, but for keeping it away for good. I know I saw some leaders in here too who manage teams, and they're also looking to help their teams. And so maybe that's you. Maybe you started in a place of work that you loved, but the more you do your job, the more you wonder if you need a change just because it's starting to feel like a lot. Or maybe you've actually looked into other career paths, but you feel stuck because nothing seems to make sense and you're just overwhelmed and feeling frozen. And like I said, it could be that you are one of those leaders out there trying to find ways to both prevent burnout, maybe for yourself and your team, but also respond to burnout that you may see showing up. So we're going to cover a lot today. I'm really excited. I will try to go through this both quickly and extensively at the same time. But we'll talk about what burnout looks like, the signs and signals. We'll talk about how to stop it before it starts, and we'll talk about how to respond to it when it shows up. We will talk about how careers fit in. We'll talk about learning about yourself and where you thrive in those careers and making lasting changes in your life and in your work so that you can actually have a career path that's burnout free. There is a section in here for how to talk with your employers about burnout because I don't think that it's an individual thing all the time. Sometimes I think we need to know the conversations we're having with the people we're working for. And so we'll cover that a little bit. And even in leadership, when you're in leadership, we'll go through what you can do as a leader to help your team members. And then I will do the best I can to answer as many questions as I can throughout this. I loved reading everybody's questions. It was so fun. But if I don't answer your question or if more come up, please feel free to ask them at the end because I'm going to cover as much as I can, both through this topic and in the questions at the end. All right. So I'm Kaylee and I have burned out. It wasn't in my career path, though. It was with my job. And that's one distinction I really want to make here for people is that we don't burn out because of a career. We burn out because of where we are performing that career, because of the workplace setting or the job that we're doing. It can lead to this place of not really feeling connected or enjoying what we're doing. My burnout story began in grad school when I was just that really standard overachieving grad student who had to do it all, wanted to do all of the classes well, had to work, also wanted to have a social life, all of the pieces. And I was just running myself ragged. It was in my I think it was my second semester of grad school where I entered my practicum and I actually failed it because I was just at a place of I couldn't do my job well. I couldn't be a student the way that I needed to be a student. And thankfully, I entered into a second practicum with a professor who saw my burnout and responded to it in the ways that I needed. And I want to pass that on to you guys. There's been other moments in my life where burnout has showed up, and thankfully, because of her lessons, I've been able to respond to it and deal with it. But I'm never going to tell you guys that I can guarantee you I'll never be burned out again. What I can tell you is that if you apply these skills and these tools that I'm going to give you, these are ways to respond to the warning signs ahead of time. If I ignore the warning signs, I can burn out, and if you ignore the warning signs, you can too. So I really want you to be equipped to catch it before it starts. So the standard definition of burnout brought by the World Health Organization is really wordy. It is burnout is a syndrome conceptualized by or resulting from chronic workplace stress that has not been successfully managed. It's characterized by three dimensions: feelings of energy depletion or exhaustion, increased mental distance from one's self, feelings of negativism or cynicism related to one's job, and reduced professional efficacy. My definition is that burnout is when we feel our stress at work goes unchecked and leaves us feeling exhausted, cynical, and ineffective. So a lot of times people want to know, but what does it look like? Because that's a great definition. I know feeling tired could be burnout. I know being more negative could be burnout, but what does it even look like? What kind of warning signs can I pay attention to know if I'm dealing with burnout? And it's a really good question because burnout has tons of symptoms. It has both the symptoms that we might see internally, but it also has symptoms externally. Things like feeling exhausted or a weakened immune system can be a part of that, or being more irritable, feeling hopeless, not being able to concentrate. And on the behavioral side, burnout might look like us distancing ourselves more, withdrawing from things that we enjoy, or maybe being a little bit more suspicious of our employer or colleagues. We just don't trust them as much anymore. They may be in it for themselves, or however we want to say that cynical piece comes out. It could be that we start to just procrastinate more. We just avoid more. We don't want to do as much. And all of these could be signs or symptoms of burnout. But one thing I also want to highlight is many of these are also signs and symptoms of mental health concerns. And so I want to just add the caveat in here that if you are struggling with many symptoms, and the ones that I bolded that may be hard to distinguish between, I just realized, many of those are also symptoms of depression and anxiety. And so if you're dealing with a lot of this, I will encourage you, if you don't have a therapist, probably like a because I'm a therapist, I'm a little biased, but I do encourage you to get help if you feel you need it. On the flip side, I've had many clients come in and say, I think I'm depressed. And then when we go through all of the things going on, we find out they're actually burnt out. So it does go either way, but if you need help determining which one it is, it's always good to get professional assistance in that too. So let's talk about what we do if you start to see those signs and symptoms. Um, I actually think we need to start with the stress because if you remember the definition said it's about the unchecked stress that then leads to the resulting symptoms of exhaustion and cynicism and losing our ability to do our job well. And so we need to, instead of dealing with the burnout symptoms, we need to go back further and address the stress. And so I have a metaphor for you that is one of my favorites to use because it not only talks about the stress, but it explains what burnout may look like from a visual way. So imagine that you're in a water tank. Everybody lives in a water tank in this metaphor, and our water tanks begin every day, maybe empty, maybe with a tiny bit of water, but every day the water level rises, and at the end of the day, the water levels fall. Uh, Everybody has stress. And because everybody has stress, we're going to see that water rise and fall. If you are taking care of yourselves and using the resources that you have to, get good sleep, maybe you exercise, maybe you have connections like social connections or whatever it is, it has ways to alleviate that stress, to let the water flow out of our tank. But if water starts to rise and it starts to get higher and higher, we need more resources. Maybe there's added things that come in, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. But maybe instead of it just being that we're dealing with our normal stress, we have more. And now the water is like chest height or so. And then we need more ways to, I say, like poke holes in your tank to drain the stress out. If you aren't taking care of yourself though, if those normal or natural drains at the bottom of your tank, like eating, sleeping, being social, moving, whatever it may be, if those aren't there and we aren't coping with our stress, then there's no way for that stress to get out of us and the water continues to rise. And if there's added stress that comes into our life, maybe we have drains, but it's the input and the output are not matching. And so now the water continues to rise. This still isn't burnout, though. This is still just talking about stress. But when our stress is up to here, it can feel like any little thing tips us over the edge. We could accidentally drop a glass of water and just completely fall apart because we can't take one more thing. And so when this happens, we are still in stress, but our brain and our body is saying, I'm getting real tired, real fast. It's still fighting, it's still struggling. But burnout happens when our brain goes, time out. I'm done. I don't want to right now. I want to be very clear. This is not about dying. This is about your brain going, I need a break. I'm going to just sink to the bottom of the tank for a moment because I cannot keep swimming. And that's what burnout can feel like. It can feel like instead of trying to struggle through the stress, we've just kind of went, I'm done. I can't right now. And then, of course, our brain kicks back in and it goes, I'm drowning. I need to deal with this. And it pushes us to the surface and we get ourselves caught in a loop. Now, there is hope. And that's the whole reason I have this conversation is that I don't believe that we're stuck in that loop. I think it takes two sides. We need to have a plan that both limits the water coming in and that releases the water going out. We need to have ways that we can both make sure we're continuing to take care of ourselves and also have ways to draw healthy boundaries in the various stressors in our life. So, two things here. This QR code will take you to that illustration. And the reflection questions. If you feel like this exercise is helpful for you, if you would like to be able to go through it in more depth, you absolutely can. The QR code will take you to that set of slides so that you can go through it. These reflection questions are meant to be a more visual way to picture what your particular stress is and how you deal with it. It's going to be unique to every person. I'm going to give you a few suggestions here in a moment, but about your daily drains and things like that. But this is a way to start to address the burnout that you may be feeling. Now, your everyday self-care are those everyday drains. And most of these we know about. Most of these we hear people tell us, and we're like, I know, I know. And so I encourage you, if you're in a place of burnout, pick just one and just focus on that one because it doesn't have to be all of them all at once. Sometimes when we're starting something new, it's almost like spinning plates. Like if you imagine spinning 20 plates at once, they'd all come crashing down and you wouldn't succeed at any of them. But if you focused on one singular plate and you were spinning it on its little stick, eventually you'd get that plate spinning. And then you'd move on to the next. You'd move on to the next skill that you want to do. You get that one going, you check in on the first one, and you kind of make your way through building that self-care plan for yourself. Um, Many of these people know exercise, movement, prioritizing consistent sleep. I'd probably argue that that should be the first one if it's not on your list. But one thing I want to talk about is the getting outside and the practicing gratitude. Getting outside can literally be standing out in the sun for 5 minutes. I know we got gray skies today. I understand that. I tell people all the time, I'm like, man, I don't know. I've accepted winter in Michigan, but I need some blue in my sky every once in a while. And so even just stepping outside though and getting some natural light in your system can be good. Um, and practicing gratitude, the other one that I really like to talk about because we hear it, practicing gratitude is not listing 10 things you're thankful for. I know that that's what most people tell you to do. It is wrong. Practicing gratitude, they've actually done some studies and they found that if you list a bunch of things that you're grateful for, it doesn't have the same impact as listing one thing you're grateful for, but spending a lot of time on it. So, my way of explaining this is that gratitude is not focusing on the thing that you're thankful for, but instead it's focusing on the impact that has on you. So instead of, oh, I'm thankful the sun is out, it's, I'm so thankful I can see the sun today because it means there's blue sky. And every time I see blue sky, I feel a little bit lighter. And that lightness gives me hope in the day that I can get through the day. And oh my goodness, it's also lighter longer and it makes me feel more energized when there's more light out. That's practicing gratitude, not making a long list of things. So I always like to go on that one a little bit longer because most people just make the lists and I don't think that they help that much. So now boundaries are the other thing that we need to talk about because in that metaphor about the tank, I talked about limiting the things that are extra. Sometimes we have a lot of extra stress in our life that we can't necessarily stop. Um, a good example might be that if you're in a job that has certain times of year that are really work heavy, maybe it's, say you're a CPA and it's tax time and you're doing twice as many hours of work right now, and that's not necessarily something you can stop. Then it becomes creating boundaries as best you can. And boundaries are not what you expect others to do, but they are about what you will do to protect your own well-being. So, an example of this would be instead of asking somebody else not to email you after work hours, you tell them, I won't be responding to emails after 5 p.m. And then you don't respond to emails after 5 p.m. So when you're setting boundaries, you always want to frame it in terms of what is it that I will do if a situation comes up? in terms of how I handle it. And the other piece that I think can be really helpful in terms of coping skills and strategies for burnout is self-compassion. Um, the in the world of therapy, the primary person that talks about self-compassion is Kristen Neff, and she has a website that's selfcompassion.org. Highly recommend you check it out if you want to know more about self-compassion. But part of what she talks about in exploring self-compassion is that there are three parts to it. There's the first part of acknowledging where you're at and practicing kindness to yourself in that. And so acknowledging is not agreeing with, it's not saying it's okay. It is simply saying, this is where we're at. I am burnt out. And then the second step is recognizing that you're human. You can't do it all. And that's what your burnout is usually telling you. My burnout is telling me that I can't do it all because I'm human, and being human is not bad. And then the third piece of that model is practicing mindful self-acceptance or mindful self-compassion, can be another way to put it. And this is where you check in with yourself. How can I take care of myself in this moment? Now, I know I kind of went through it a little bit quickly earlier, but the professor that kind of pulled me out of my burnout initially, she did these steps with me. I couldn't have told you that that's what was going on in the moment, but it started with her going, "How are you?" And then sitting and waiting and giving me the space to say, "I am burnt out. I am tired. I don't know if I can do this." And then her giving me the space to also go, maybe it's okay if I don't hustle and grind my way through everything because I'm human. And then she actually kind of gave me some options for paths of how I could care for myself in that moment. She gave me some other job options because the job that I was in was a big part of the stress for me. And so she gave me some other ways to draw that make that change, draw that boundary kind of thing around my stress. So I love self-compassion practices. I think they are phenomenal. And I think that they are really honest with ourselves about where we are at, what we what we are capable of in that moment and how we can care for ourselves. And I just want to add, if you ever ask yourself, how can I care for myself in this moment? And your brain goes, man, I'm just thirsty. Like, just go get some water. It may sound really silly, but those small responses to that question can be so powerful in the bigger picture because then we start to learn to trust the answers to that question. So these were some of the questions that I saw come up, and I'm going to cover all of them in a way, but I'm kind of blanket cover them. Sorry, I'm not practicing good video etiquette because I have a cat in my chair. The questions that came up were things like, what if it's my job and I don't have control over that? What if I don't have the time or energy because I'm already burnt out or I've already tried? What if I can't leave my job? What if my job pays the bills and I can't just up and leave the job, but I know I need to figure something out? Or what if I feel stuck in a loop and I just don't think that I don't have the energy to get out of the loop, but I also feel like that's all I can do is just survive. So this is one of the pieces that I find helps many of my clients in terms of understanding not only the work that they're in, but work that they may want to pursue. So again, QR code takes you to a website for this assessment. You can take it now, but I would encourage you to pause. Don't take it now and take it later because I want to be able to talk through with you what these results are. But if you want to pull it up, this is a way for you to see it. And as always, I can send all of the links that I have these QR codes linked to Danny for it to be posted afterwards. I'm totally okay with that. I just like to have it available in case people want to follow along. So the Spark type is an assessment that's not typically used in career work because most people don't know about it. It was released in 2018. So in terms of career tests, it's a pretty young assessment, but it has been researched many, many times. And they have one of the most extensive frequently asked questions page that outlines all of the studies that they've done behind it, what it is, what they want you to know about the spark type. So highly recommend if you want to know more, go check out their website. But the spark type doesn't just look at what kind of job you should do. In fact, it doesn't recommend any jobs. Instead, it tells you where you do your work best or how you do your work best. It gives you your primary spark type to tell you that. It gives you a secondary one, a shadow spark type that supports you in being able to do your best work. But it also tells you your anti-spark type, which I love because it tells you, hey, you may be able to do this part of the job, but it takes the most out of you. And so it's going to feel like the heaviest lift. Doesn't mean you can't do it, just means it's hard. And so I explain it like this. And I realize at some point I may not be able to use this metaphor, but I am holding on as long as I can. But if you imagine that you have these two teachers who most of us know, Miss Frizzle and Mr. Feeney, and they are both teachers. So we cannot blame or claim that their job is why they love what they do. It's how they do their job. Miss Frizzle over here has the magic school bus. She takes kids on a journey and she brings an idea to life to help students learn. And Mr. Feeney teaches his students through guidance and insight. He's the kind of guy who just sits back and lets a student figure things out as they're in his presence. But if you took Mr. Feeney and you said, hey, you got to run the magic school bus for a day, he might quit his job. And if you took Miss Frizzle and put her in Boy Meets World and said, you got to run this class for a day. I can't remember the name of the school, but anyway, she also would probably quit her job because it isn't the career that would stop them from doing that work. It's how they performed their career in that space. So your spark type can be so powerful in understanding how you need to make shifts in your job. The spark type, every single one has a motto. So just so you have an idea of what they might look like without taking the assessment, these are the mottos. These are the 10 types that might show up and the mottos that go along with them. Where I see this coming up the most is people will know that they want to do something. They know that they are in the right career path, but they keep feeling like something is wrong. And so we go through the spark type, and a good example that I can give is I've worked with a therapist before, and the therapist was like, I know I want to be a therapist. I know I like this work, but for some reason I'm not enjoying this work. And so we talked about it, and they were doing a lot of work that was the nurturer. And also, I realized this slide might be a little small, and it might be leaving one of them out. But it was the nurturer. And the nurturer is I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to support you and help you. And they were supporting their clients through nurturing. But what their spark type result was that they were the scientist. They wanted to figure things out. They wanted to evaluate and understand and get to the answer. And we made some tweaks in how they did their therapy work. And as soon as they were able to step into doing more of that scientist role with their clients and adjusting how they did their work, they started liking it again. So you can make adjustments in the work that you're in, or you can even pursue jobs where they emphasize that motivation or that goal that they have for how they want people to perform the job. So then what about employers? And this is the piece that I want to spend just a little bit of time on because I want you guys to understand that it isn't just you needing to make changes. And in fact, I think a lot of times the big changes need to happen in the workplace. Many studies have been done to look at what's going on with burnout. Studies have shown that 6 out of 10 employees report that they either have been burnt out or are burnt out. And they said that it's things like the negative impacts on the job, the lack of recognition, doing emotionally draining work, and not having work-life balance that leads them to feeling burnt out. But on the flip side, 8 out of 10 employees actually say that if a workspace they want like a healthy workspace. They don't want just to have access to mental health. They want a space that values things like recognition, that values connection and support, that values work-life balance. And when employees have those positive impacts within their workplace, they are reporting that that has an even greater impact on preventing burnout. So while burnout can be caused by the workplace, it can also be prevented by the workplace. Employers can focus on these 6 areas. In fact, if you are in a workplace and you want to talk with an employer, these are the areas that I would recommend you check in with yourself on where you may need something. But if you're a leader or an employer yourself, these are the areas I highly recommend you check in on and say, are these actually working right now? Workload concerns means, do you have enough staff for the amount of work that needs to be done, or are you short-staffed? Employers need to make sure that they have appropriate numbers, that they have things like workflows for parts of the job that may be repeatable and it can take some of the mental load off. And if there are inefficiencies, they are working to problem solve those because we want to limit the overall workload where it can be limited. The second thing employers can focus on is autonomy, control on the job, giving employees the ability to talk about their experience in the job, to talk about how they believe they can contribute to the position. Employers who focus on giving the resources and support for further growth and development, and even focusing on employee strengths, are going to see more positive impacts on their overall employee well-being. You saw it in the previous slides, but recognition is huge. So employers who are able to acknowledge or recognize when somebody is doing good work, when they are being appreciated for the work that they're doing, people want to stay in jobs like that because they feel like their work actually matters. But one of the other surprising things that stood out to me, I put it here, is when employers talk about career planning with their employees, it can be really powerful. Employers often in the interview process may ask, where do you see yourself in 5 years, or what are your intentions moving forward in the company? But being able to encourage that throughout an employee's time at the job can actually increase the ways that they feel grounded and connected within that space. Again, community was on that previous slide too. Having ways to connect, like having a break room that's nice to be in can be a way to give community. Maybe having a couple of board games in there. I'm a nerd, I like board games. And so having a couple of really quick board games in the break room can be a really good way to build connection amongst employees, and having that community can be a powerful way to prevent burnout. Fairness and transparency is one where you want your employees to trust you. You want them to know that you're going to be consistent with policies and procedures, and when changes are made, that you're going to be transparent about those changes. And then values has to do with your company's mission, or the organization's mission and values. How are the expectations that you have as an employer coming out in the products or the results that you're asking of your employees? And so being able to connect those and even check in with people and say, hey, are you aligned with our values? Is this something that we want to explore more with you? Because values matter. In fact, workplace values tend to be the thing that determines satisfaction in a job. And so we want to make sure values are aligned. Now, if you're not an employer, but you're a leader, there are things that you can do as a leader that also can help your team members or those that are under you in terms of supervisory leadership, those kinds of pieces. So first, creating the healthy work environment. So checking in with people, making sure that they're taking care of themselves, maybe even helping them draw boundaries. So if you see people who are working past the time that they're supposed to be working, checking in with them and going, hey, what do you need to be able to clock out on time so that you can go home and rest? Recognizing contributions, recognition being huge over and over again. I'm going to emphasize that. Giving room and opportunities for professional development, giving people the chance to grow. One of the workplace values that people often will report wanting is achievement, which is the ability to get better at what you're doing or progress in your career. And so, if leaders are able to find ways to help their team members progress or grow in their career, they feel more connected and it prevents burnout. It's also so important that leaders are setting the example. Because at the end of the day, if you're not taking care of yourself, then it's going to be hard for you to help take care of your team members. And so, as a leader or a supervisor or an employer, if you can set the example of what it looks like to create a healthy workspace, have clear boundaries, being able to focus on that personal development, professional development, all of those pieces. If you're showing that, it helps others see that and move into that as well. So I know that I have covered a lot. And so I wanted to make sure that there was room and time for questions for everybody. So I'm going to hand the floor over to questions and then um, we'll go from there. So thank you guys. Thank you so much. I know I went through a lot, but I really appreciate your attention today.
Thank you so much, Kaylee. I learned a ton. This is so helpful. I love the practical
Yeah.
tools and the assessment. I'm probably going to take that once we wrap up just because I'm so curious.
It's a fun one.
Yes. So, yes, if anyone has questions, you are welcome to enter those in the chat. You're also welcome to unmute if you'd like to just ask your question. We'll wait a little bit just for any of those questions to come in. And Kaylee, while we're waiting for questions, where
hmm
can people find you if they want to learn
Oh,
more or
sure.
want to work with you? Yeah, can you tell us about
One more,
that?
one more slide. If you want to connect with me or questions come up afterwards, QR code, it takes you to my website, but you can contact me in any of these forms. I've had many people message me after the fact because questions come up, or if somebody is watching the recording and they have a question. I am always more than happy to answer them. So feel free to reach out. My email is Kaylee@lookoutpointcoaching.com. My website is lookoutpointcoaching.com. I tried to keep it all pretty straightforward and easy. But yeah, I absolutely love helping where I can. So there you go.
Excellent. Thank you. We did have a question come in the chat, and I'll read
Okay.
it. Is there a correlation between decreased confidence and burnout? The person said they personally experienced a dip in confidence and because of
hmm
burnout found it difficult to build it back up again.
hmm So yes, because burnout, yeah, it's very circular. So I'm going to try and explain, like burnout begins by eroding confidence. And then confidence feels it becomes that loop of, well, I don't even know if I can get out of this, and therefore I'm not going to try. I'm just going to try and do like the bare minimum to get a breath of water, and then I'm going to sink back down. So burnout leads to the eroded confidence. And then on the flip side, like what I will say, let me just pause at like the solution. So to like, sorry, I'm thinking of like how to answer this because yes, there's a correlation, but I also want to
Yes.
tell you uh what to do in that situation. Number one, it is good to get therapy if you don't already have it, just because it can help to have that extra person to help you look at what else is going on. We can get so caught in a loop of lost confidence that we get to a place of what's called learned helplessness, where we actually go, there's no point. I keep trying and it gets me nowhere. And when we've hit that place of learned helplessness, what typically helps is small victories and support. So having people around us to help us through the things that are hard and heavy, but also having opportunities to have really tiny victories. Like, um, let's say somebody is just trying to make sure that they get up on time. And so a small victory might be that they sit up in bed when their alarm goes off and they're like, I actually sat up. That is a tiny victory. I didn't get out of bed, but I did sit up, and that's good. So, like, celebrating tiny victories is a part of that. And then you build on them as you go to rebuild confidence.
Mm,
So,
thank you. That's super
yeah.
helpful. I think too, a lot of us can engage. Another like therapy term to throw out there is the all or nothing thinking. And what you were just
Mhm.
sharing kind of reminds me of like a good antidote to that, right? Is like
Mhm.
if we just do like either I'm sleeping in or I'm getting up and there's no in between, and even
Right.
just letting those little micro victories or little moments kind of
Mhm.
negate the all or nothing thinking is super helpful. So,
Yeah.
great
Yeah.
question. I haven't seen any others come in the chat, so we'll wait just another minute. If you have a question, feel free to, again, unmute or ask it in the chat. And if we don't have any other questions, we can wrap up and we'll just keep an eye out there for another little bit.
I was trying to think if there were any questions that I didn't answer. I tried to answer them all.
Mm,
One thing that I did see, and part of why I talked about the employer piece, because I saw many questions that were kind of like, but what if it's not just me? Like, what if it's people tell me to self-care and set boundaries, Kaylee, all day long, but what about when I need something more from someone else? And that's where I do think the conversations with employers are important, um, at both a macro level of like organizations need to be having conversations within leadership, but even as an employee, it is okay to have those mini conversations with supervisors or team leads or whoever it is, because it is okay to say, hey, I really like working here, but, or, hey, I really like doing this career. And I always like, don't say but in that circumstance, it negates it. Um, I also can't sustain this. I think, and people don't want to just hear a problem, they want to hear the solution. So you need to go one step further and say, and I think that one way that this could improve is if there were opportunities where the work I am putting in has some kind of feedback. Maybe you don't say recognition, maybe you say feedback instead. And that way you're talking with your boss or your leader and saying, I want the recognition for the work that I'm doing. Can you do that for me? Just in a more strategic way for you.
yeah, it's really good. Um, Another question popped in the chat. After leaving a super unhealthy work environment and starting over at a new job, how do I rebuild trust with new coworkers and leadership?
Yeah, and I see that somebody else gave the like absolutely 100%. So you're not the
Yeah.
only person to ask that, Julie. I appreciate that question. Um, I'm going to give you about 16 metaphors today because I've got another one. Trust to me is like a chair. Like if you sit in a chair and it breaks and that chair looks put together again, the next time you go in, you're going to hesitate. If it breaks a second time, you're done. You're like, I'm not sitting in that chair again. To rebuild trust in any circumstance, you have to know what broke in the first place. You have to know what parts of trust were broken for you. And then when you're stepping into a new relationship or a new workplace setting or whatever it is, you need to be able to look at those specific pieces. So, for example, let's say that the work environment was like really catty. A whole lot of gossip, a whole lot of talking about each other behind each other's backs. You would want to look for that at any new workplace, asking, like, how do people talk to each other in the break room? How do people, like when somebody has something going on in their life, what's the conversations about that or around that look like? And so being able to know exactly what led you to lose trust gives you the answers for how you can rebuild trust. And the other part of this is I like to play a game called Similar, Not the Same. So, what parts of the new workplace are worrying you that feel similar to other work environments? Pinpoint what the similarities are, and then check in with yourself and see if there are differences. What's not the same in this circumstance? What is different about this particular work setting that I can rely on a little bit differently? Yeah.
That's great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Perfect. All right. Well, I don't see any other questions. So yes, let's go ahead and wrap up. So, like Haley said, her contact information is there. I just also saw Kyla's adding our alumni career resources website into the chat. And so please make sure to go ahead and visit that if there's other career resources that you're looking for. Like I said, we keep a library of all of these recordings from previous webinars on that as well. So if you'd like to access it in the future or other webinars, go ahead and look for that. We also do have our March and April webinars coming up on resume, crafting a winning resume. And our April webinar is going to be about pivoting from a different industry or into a different industry. So if those are topics of interest to you, please make sure to RSVP for those as well. And so glad you enjoyed it. Thank you again, Kaylee, for your time today. It was really good information. And thanks to everyone joining, and we hope you have a good rest of your day.